Survey ranks Hong Kong the world's 7th most competitive economy. Triads eye opportunities in old building renovation projects. And Obama's limited strike plan gets congressional leaders' support.
Hello and a very good evening. Hong Kong has climbed 2 spots in a survey on global competitiveness by the World Economic Forum. It now ranks 7th among 148 economies. Evelina Leung reports.
Hong Kong's ranking rose from 9th to 7th in the Global Competitiveness Report 2013 to 2014. The quality of infrastructure was world number 1 for the 4th year running. The report also says the city's commerce and labor markets continued to do well, and that the financial sector maintained its efficiency and reliability. But Hong Kong is urged to improve higher education and innovative technology in order to stay competitive. Switzerland remained the world's most competitive economy for the 5th straight year. Singapore and Finland stayed 2nd and 3rd, while Germany and the US each rose 2 places to finish in the top 5. This reversed a 4-year downward trend for the world's largest economy. The report cited a perceived improvement in the country's financial market, as well as greater confidence in its public institutions. Japan was the other Asian economy that finished in the top 10. China was the best performer among all emerging economies, coming in at 29th. That's unchanged from a year ago. As for Eurozone countries, debt-laden Greece finished 91st. The report did call on Beijing to develop the private sector and create a more level playing field for small and medium-sized enterprises. It also cited problems such as corruption and public security. Evelina Leung, TVB News.
The Long-Term Housing Strategy Steering Committee has proposed in its consultation document a total housing supply target of 470,000 units for the next 10 years. The average number of units per year is smaller than those in previous government housing plans. Secretary for Transport and Housing Anthony Cheung disagreed that the steering committee may have underestimated the territory's housing needs. Jenny Lam reports.
A growing population and the waiting time for public housing is now longer than ever before. The Long-Term Housing Strategy Steering Committee has proposed a total housing supply target of 470,000 units for the next 10 years. That's 47,000 units a year. A similar document published in 1987 projected a total demand for 960,000 new flats between then and 2001. That is, an average of 68,000 units a year. Another long-term housing strategy document released in 1998 put the housing needs at an average of 80,000 units a year and proposed a supply target of 85,000 new flats each year. Secretary for Transport and Housing Anthony Cheung does not believe the steering committee's current projection is too low. Speaking on a radio program this morning, he said trends in the composition of the population and the formation of new families and households are all changing. He said housing demand changes as the economic and social environment changes. When asked if he believes housing needs in the next 10 years will be less than in the past 1 or 2 decades, he suggested that many people who were looking for homes might have already settled down. He said the current housing strategy cannot be directly compared with supply targets in the past and insists the proposed figure of 470,000 is well-founded. The biggest challenge right now, the housing chief stressed, is limited land supply. Objections to development near their homes by people in different districts, he added, is a subject for public debate. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
Liu Meng-hong, a former ally of Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying, appeared in court again today to face a charge of perverting public justice. The case has now been adjourned until later this month as it's being transferred to the district court.
Liu Meng-hong, a former executive director of the listed company Pearl Oriental Oil, arrived at the Eastern Magistracy this morning. The 64-year-old is charged with doing acts tending and intended to pervert the course of public justice. According to the ICAC, Liu emailed Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying and the anti-graft body's head, Simon Pei, back in January, demanding a stop to an ICAC investigation into him. Liu, formerly a staunch supporter of the CE, made threats by referencing his past dealings and connections with Leung. The magistrate accepted the prosecution's request to transfer the case to the district court, where the hearing will begin on September 24th. On leaving the court this morning, Liu referred to Chinese historic figures who faced persecution or were wrongly accused, saying that he now understands how they would have felt. He remains out on bail but is barred from leaving Hong Kong.
Turning overseas now, US President Barack Obama's plan to launch limited military strikes has gained some valuable support in Congress. Both the Republican and Democratic leaders in the House of Representatives have expressed their support for the plan. The Obama administration blamed Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government for a deadly sarin gas attack outside Damascus last month. Alan Buckner has the story.
Obama met with the congressional leaders at the White House, where he expressed a willingness to change the language of the resolution to address lawmakers' concerns.
The key point that I want to emphasize to the American people, the military plan that has been developed by our Joint Chiefs and that I believe is appropriate, is proportional, it is limited, it does not involve boots on the ground. This is not Iraq, and this is not Afghanistan.
Republican House Speaker John Boehner emerged from the meeting expressing support for the president's plan.
The use of these weapons have to be responded to, and only the United States has the capability and the capacity to stop Assad and to warn others around the world that this type of behavior is not going to be tolerated.
And while many members of Obama's Democratic Party are opposed to the use of force against Syria, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi gave her endorsement.
From a national security standpoint, we have to send a very clear message to those who have weapons of mass destruction of any variety that they should forget about using them.
Russian President Vladimir Putin, who opposes the planned action, said he doesn't rule out his agreement to a UN military operation in Syria if it is proved that Damascus used poison gas on its own people. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called on the Security Council to show leadership and develop an appropriate response if UN testing shows the allegations of chemical weapons use prove to be true. But he also expressed his preference for a political settlement. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
The man who held 3 women captive in his home in the U.S. state of Ohio for nearly a decade was found dead in prison last night. Officials say he apparently committed suicide. 53-year-old Ariel Castro was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years last month after pleading guilty to 937 charges, including kidnap and rape. He was found hanging in his cell Tuesday evening. He was being held in protective custody because of the notoriety of his case. That meant he was checked every 30 minutes, but a prison official said he was not on suicide watch. The 3 women in the case disappeared separately between 2002 and 2004 and were later found to have been held captive in Castro's home in Cleveland. They regained freedom after one of them broke part of the door and called neighbors for help on May the 6th.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has played down fears that contamination from the damaged Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant would affect Tokyo's bid to host the 2020 Olympic Games. Abe said today his government was going to step in and take charge of dealing with the continuing radioactive leakage issues surrounding the crippled nuclear plant. The International Olympic Committee will soon choose the host city for the 2020 Games among Tokyo, Istanbul and Madrid. Still, the crisis in Fukushima appears far from over. Radiation readings around tanks holding contaminated water at the plant have spiked by more than 20% to their highest levels. That's raising fresh concerns about the cleanup efforts there. And still ahead in the news. Taxi driver jailed for driving away with passengers' luggage. A new survey on public perception of the middle class. And a glassy building in London causes intense heat in its neighbourhood.
We're back tonight with more local news. A taxi driver who drove off with his passengers' luggage after a row over the fare was today sentenced to 10 weeks in prison. He pleaded guilty to a charge of theft at the Fanling Magistrates Court. Jenny Lam reports.
34-year-old taxi driver Fung Kim Wai told police that he chucked his passengers' luggage into a nullah in Tin Shui Wai, but divers have not been able to retrieve it. The court was told that the cabbie picked up 2 passengers at the airport last month who were on their way to the Lok Ma Chau border checkpoint. As the passengers did not have Hong Kong money to pay the fare, the taxi driver suggested that the payment could be made in renminbi. When they arrived at Lok Ma Chau, the defendant insisted that the exchange rate for the fare should be 1 yuan to 1 Hong Kong dollar. The passengers refused. The defendant then drove off with $60,000 worth of luggage. He pleaded guilty to a charge of theft. The defendant said he overreacted out of anger, but the magistrate said taxi drivers like Fung ruin Hong Kong's reputation. The penalty must pose a deterrent effect on the taxi trade. The cabbie was sentenced to 10 weeks in prison. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
Well, some of the taxi trade are worried about the fallout from the case. They warn it could affect the reputation of their industry. Andrew Lau has that story.
Many shops in Hong Kong accept both the Hong Kong and mainland currencies as more tourists from across the border come to the city. Of course, we welcome the renminbi and we always stick to the market exchange rate, this shopkeeper says. But this shopkeeper insists that customers must pay in Hong Kong dollars because he doesn't want to have arguments over the exchange rate. Legislator Paul Se says that shopkeepers can accept the renminbi only if both parties agree on the exchange rate. Now, if the buyer and seller cannot reach an agreement on the currency exchange rate, some lawyers suggest that the seller should request the buyer to change the currency back to Hong Kong dollars before proceeding with the transaction. Meanwhile, chairman of the Kowloon Taxi Owners Association, Wen Chek Ming, says he's worried that the incident involving the jailed taxi driver could tarnish the reputation of Hong Kong. Wen reminded taxi drivers to explain the problems with passengers in a rational manner. Andrew Lau, TVB News.
Well, triads are resorting to threats and bribes in order to secure old building renovation contracts that are subsidized by government agencies. The police and the ICAC are joining hands with the Urban Renewal Authority and other bodies to fight the problem. Jao De Silva reports.
Triads are eyeing an opportunity in aging buildings and government subsidies for residents wanting to renovate such buildings. In the first 8 months of the year, the police handled 22 such cases, which is equivalent to the total number of such cases in 2012. The majority of the cases targeted elderly residents in the districts of Kowloon City and Kwun Tong. As for the ICAC, it says over the past few years it has been handling around 1,000 cases yearly in connection with bribery during the tendering phase of renovation projects.
I can give a very simple example is that I see there is a construction project, then I would like to get this contract. Then I will just intimidate other companies not to lay the bids on this contract. I will use all sorts of illegal means, or by intimidating, or by hitting them, attacking them, or after the renovation works is in the middle of the process, and I will damage all the finished products.
The authorities have now come up with Reno Safe, a strategy they promise will help put an end to these illicit activities. The police, the ICAC, the Urban Renewal Authority, the Housing Society and other bodies are forming a working group that will offer advice to flat owners and other interested parties in order to help them avoid falling prey to this type of crime. Apart from offering advice on crime prevention, the working group will also be distributing information kits like this one, telling owners what to do if they feel that certain parties are illegally interfering with the renovation process. And while the ICAC will continue handling corruption cases, police will provide district anti-triad officers who will be in touch with residents and owners. But that may not be enough. Kowloon City District Councillor Pius Yam emphasised that the elderly remain particularly vulnerable to this type of crime because they often can't understand the terms of the renovation contracts. And the chairman of the Hong Kong Owners Club, Diamond Shi, says the government should issue clear guidelines on the costs of old building renovation projects to prevent ill-intended contractors from taking advantage of trusting elderly residents. João da Silva, TVB News.
Now, would you consider yourself middle class? A new survey on what the public perceives is middle class has come up with a rather wide range of definitions.
The definition of middle class has been up for debate ever since Financial Secretary John Tsang labelled himself that because he drinks coffee and watches French films.
Maybe assets and culture.
Income is one of the key factors as well, yeah. About, I would say, at least 60K or above on your monthly salary.
The Bohemia Foundation surveyed about 1,000 people aged 18 and above in July to see what the public considers middle class.
If there's any future policies aimed at, for example, social mobility, how to help people achieve the dream of become a middle class, then should take these into consideration.
Might be a little easier said than done. More than 86% of respondents pointed to economic aspects, but there was a wide range of ideas when it came down to the details. On property, roughly 17% believed middle classes owning a home worth $2 to $4 million. Nearly 29% said $4 to $6 million, while 12% thought you have to own property worth $10 to $15 million to be considered middle class. For those who said assets, excluding property, are key, a fifth thought having $1 to $2 million is enough, while more than 11% said one needs $5 to $6 million of assets to qualify. As for those who looked at monthly salary for a definition, 13% said about $30,000 to $40,000, 21% said about $50,000 to $60,000, while 14% said $100,000 to $200,000. On cultural aspects, nearly 51% of respondents thought middle class means having taste in lifestyle, while nearly 74% pointed to being culturally enriched. Interestingly, more than 70% thought being middle class means you should be concerned about social issues, and nearly 45% included participating in social or political issues in their definition.
The number of Primary 1 classes in the North District is expected to drop next year. And with cross-border school children in the mix, competition for a spot could be fierce. Evelina Lone tells us more.
There are 107 Primary 1 classes in North District in the current academic year, according to the Education Bureau's 2013 primary school profile. That's down slightly from 110 a year ago, and the number is expected to decrease further. Currently, there are 94 Primary 6 classes in the district, and the classrooms they take up could be used for Primary 1 classes next year. This could mean a drop of 13 Primary 1 classes and fewer school places available then. Chan Siu-hong, chairman of the North District Primary School Heads Association, says with many parents unwilling to send their kids to schools far away from home, this will drastically increase the competition for a Primary 1 spot in the district. Parents who want to apply for a Primary 1 place at government or aided schools for their kids under the Primary 1 admission system next year can obtain application forms from today until September 27th. They should apply directly at the school between September 23rd and 27th. The results will be announced on November 25th. And cross-border children who've applied for a school in North District but failed to get a place can choose from a list of schools during the central allocation phase in January. Among their choices, schools from 8 nearby school nets. Evelina Lang, TVB News.
All right, Tony, over to you for sports.
That's right, and more glory and good news to talk about Team Hong Kong at the China National Games. Hong Kong grabbed another silver medal today at the 12th China National Games in Liaoning Province, and this time the honours went to Jacqueline Lai, who took silver in the individual show jumping event. It was a welcome turn of fortune for the SAR, who suffered a setback in the team event earlier this week due to an injury to one of the horses. Afterwards, Lai said it had been a busy few weeks trying to prepare and get an understanding with her horse, and she thanked Hong Kong fans for their support.
thank you to all my Hong Kong supporters. It has been a roller coaster ride and a lot of fun, and thank you for your support.
On to tennis now. Li Na became the first singles player from China to reach the last four of the US Open. But to reach the final at Flushing Meadows, she'll have to get past defending champ Serena Williams. Despite dropping the second set against Russia's Ekaterina Makarova, Li Na wasn't going to be denied her date with destiny. Keeping her cool, the fifth seed rebounded in the third to become the first Chinese singles player to reach the US Open semi-finals.
Of course, it was exciting because first time in semi in the US Open, so I was really proud for myself because, you know, it's the last Grand Slam for end of the year.
Li's opponent in the last four will be none other than defending champ Serena Williams, who was in imperious form against Carla Suarez Navarro. The Spaniard had no answer to the top seed, who didn't even concede a game, winning 6-love, 6-love. Later, Serena was asked whether she had played her perfect game.
I played good, though. I played really good. I was just more focused than anything, but, you know, I like to believe there's room for improvement.
The men's defending champion Andy Murray also progressed, although he dropped the first set against Dennis Istomin. But the Scot recovered to win the next three, 6-1, 6-4, 6-4, to set up a last eight clash with Stanislas Wawrinka. Looming large is Murray's rival Novak Djokovic, who strung together 13 straight games to close out a 6-3, 6-love, 6-love thrashing on Marcel Granollers.
I had some great matches in the past that I can compare with this one today, but you know, this definitely have today second and third set have been, you know, some of the best tennis that I've played on hard tours in my career.
But it was the end of the road for one former Grand Slam winner. Lleyton Hewitt looked like he would pull it off against Mikhail Yezheny and reach his first major quarter-final in 4 years. But instead, it will be the Russian who will face Djokovic after edging Hewitt in a 5-set encounter.
And finally for tonight, a glassy high-rise under construction in London is being blamed for causing intense heat in its surrounding area. The skyscraper, nicknamed the walkie-talkie because of its curved shape, is reflecting focused sunlight that's causing heat of over 90 degrees Celsius. Shopkeepers in the neighborhood say carpets are being scorched, paint is blistering, and in one case, smoke started coming out of the top of the front door of a hairdressing salon. Local workers fry eggs on a windowsill below the building. The developers said they're looking into the problem. That's pretty intense.
Yeah, I'll say.
Well, that's the news for tonight.
Thanks for watching. Good night.
There was overcast and some rain today. At 5 p.m, a trough of low pressure over the coast of Guangdong and the northern part of the South China Sea brought unsettled weather to the region. Today's temperatures range from 23.9 to 26.4 degrees, and the current temperature is 24.4 degrees Celsius. 80.2 millimeters of rain has been recorded since midnight. So Freddie has the weather tomorrow. Cloudy with occasional rain. There will be a few thunderstorms overnight and tomorrow morning. Temperatures will range from 24 to 28 degrees. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 15 to 70 and the pollution level will range from low to high. The maximum UV index forecast for tomorrow will be about 4. Now, here's the latest global weather update. Showers in Shanghai and Taipei. Showers in Macau and Chengdu. Cloudy in Seoul and Tokyo. Rain in Ho Chi Minh City and Manila. Cloudy in Kuala Lumpur, thunderstorms in Singapore. Rain in Karachi, showers in Mumbai. Sunny in Cairo, sunny intervals in Nairobi. Sunny in Brisbane and Sydney. Sunny in Toronto, sunny intervals in New York.
Cloudy in Vancouver, sunny intervals in San Francisco. Sunny in London, Paris, Amsterdam, Frankfurt and Zurich. And that's the weather. Have a great evening.